Hello and welcome to a lecture on looping over items using the amazing for statement in Python. Our objectives are going to be to describe when to use a for loop and how the for loop works. And then we'll also know that for is a definite loop. Earlier we saw that while is an indefinite loop. It may go on forever. For loops in general are definite loops, which means we know they will definitely stop looping. For those of you coming from another programming language, you may see a for statement like this. Forget all about that. It's an ugly for statement. Python's for loop is easy and intuitive, and I like it so much more than that weird looking thing right there. I mean, come on. This is just ugly. Ugly. The problem that we're trying to solve with this idea of a for loop and how it changes the top to bottom execution of a Python program is we have a collection of things. It can be numbers or names or whatever it is, but we want to do the same thing with each of the things inside that collection. So let's say we have a list of names. If we have a list of names, maybe we want to print all the names out uppercase. So what we would want to do is be able to look at each of those names like Curtis and Nora and Asa, and then print each of those out using uppercase like Curtis, and then let's say you have a list of numbers somehow. You want to calculate the average. So you would have to loop over that list of numbers to create a total so that we can then divide by the number of numbers in that collection. So we're going to be looping over a collection of things. That's really important. It's a collection of things. Sometimes the collection will be really obvious, and sometimes we'll use magic to create that collection. So let's look at the anatomy of a for loop. We write the word for, and then there's a space, and then we have at least one variable name. Okay, so the for loop has a variable in it, and then we have a space and the word in, and then a space, and then the collection of things that we want to loop over. And what it does, and there's a picture of this like in the book, it's like what it's going to do is it's going to take the number 1 and it's going to put it inside num, and then it will run the block, and so it will print 1. And then it comes back here to the loop, and then it takes the second one. It takes the second one, and it puts it into the integer, and then it will run the loop, print number 2, and then it will come back here. And then it will take the third one. Ooh, what's the third one here? The third one is this one, and it'll put it in num. There's a picture like this. And it's just, it doesn't do it justice. Because when I look at this, I'm like, how do I? I mean, for some people, maybe it's like totally obvious as to how this makes sense. But for me, sometimes when I see something like this for the first time, it's all about boom. What? So let's just take a moment and see it in action, okay? So here's my example, and I've got 3 for loops in it. We're going to look and see what each of these for loops do. This first one is going to print out the numbers 1 through 5, okay? So we'll say numbers 1 through 5. And then this one here prints out numbers 0 through 4. And that's what this range thing does. And then down here it prints out the first 10 years of somebody's life. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. And then once we run it, we'll step through it line by line to see how it affects. So we run this, and it says numbers 1 through 5, and that's this statement here. And then it says for number in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so what it's doing is it's for each of those numbers, it takes that first value, puts it into that variable, and then we can use that variable inside the for loop. Print 1, print 2, print 3, print 4, print 5. Then we have range 5, which creates something like this, but it starts at 0 and it goes up to, but not including that number. So in this case, for number in range 5 prints out 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we're here, input, what year were you born in? So I'll say 1992, because yeah, that's the year I was born in. And now it turns it into an integer, and it creates a range from that number up to, but not including that number plus 10. So it ends up printing out 1992, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2000, 2001, but not 2002 because that number is not included. Now that we've seen how it runs and what the output is, let's step through it by running our Python debugger. So it starts here, We've printed out numbers 1 through 5 right there. So now we're on this line. What happens when we do our step? Boop. Okay, it's inside this. So the for loop is going to run for each of the elements in here. And right now, number is equal to 1. So it's taken that first value on the first loop and set number equal to 1. And now we can print that number. And I'm going to hit go, and it prints out number 1, and now we're back up here again. So now it's going to go to the next value. That's the thing about the for loop, is it remembers where it is in this collection of things here. Now it's on number 2. So it's going to take that value and put it into number. And if I hit go, now the number is 2. And I can print that number. And now I'm back to the for loop. Have I gone through all the elements yet? The answer is no. I'm on this one now. And the for loop is like, oh, it's number 3. So I'll put that inside number. So when I go inside the for block, now number is 3. And I can print that out. Now I'm back up here. Am I done with this collection of things? The answer is no. So the next thing is 4. And it's going to put that inside number. And now number is equal to 4. And I can print out that number. Then I get to 5. And it puts that into number for me. And now number is 5. And I'm here. Now I get back to the for loop. I'm done with 5. I'm done with the whole list of things. There are no more things in the list. And so now the for loop is like, I'm done. Next, please. See, so it goes through each element of the list. And then once it's done, it's done. It doesn't do this part of it anymore. Now we're down here. We're going to print this. Range, like I said, creates a list. It creates a list of numbers for us, starting with 0 up to this number, but not including it. If we only give it one argument, it's from 0 up to that number. So what's the first value in range that's going to be assigned here? Number is now equal to 0. It took that 0 out of this range and put it in a number. Now it's inside here and it'll print it out. So now it comes back up here and it's like, what's the next thing in the range? Well, it goes up to 5, but not including 5. So now we get number equals 1. And we come back up here and get the next number out of the range. And that number is 2. And we come back to the number and we get the next number out of the range, which is 3. We come back up to there. We get the next number out. That's the number 4. And we come back up here. What's the next number in the range? It would be 5, but we told it to stop at 5. So give me a range from 0 up to 5, but not including 5. So that means this range is now empty, and that for loop is now done. Now we're going to ask for a year, 1992. I'll hit enter. It's going to take that year and turn it into a number, the first 10 years of my life. And so now year is 1992. Year plus 10 is 2002. So it's going to take each of the values in that range from 1992 up to, but not including 2002, and assign it to year each time. So the first time, what's the first number in our range? It's going to be the number that our year is, 1992. So you can see year is 1992. When I do it next, year is 1993. And when I do it next, year is 1994. It's just pulling out the next number from this range. And it keeps doing that until it gets to where year plus 10. So right now we're on year 2000 because I clicked that continue button. So we're going to click year 2000. The next thing is 2001. So we're going to print 2001. The next would be 2002, but that's outside of that range. That's this number here, up to but not including that. And so that for loop is done and we are done. So for loops will go through each element in a list or collection, whatever you want to call it. This is a literal. This is called a list literal because I can see all of the elements. I type the square bracket and then a comma separated list of values and then another bracket. Here I do range, which creates like a virtual list for me from 0 up to 4, up to this number. Starting at 0 if I only have one argument, and when I have two arguments, it starts at this number and goes up to but not including that number. This is how for loops work. It goes through a collection and gives you a variable that contains that each value one at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. and then 1992 through 2001. So that's how the for loop works. So as long as the collection for the for loop is finite, and we saw some of those, we saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is a list literal. It has the square bracket, a comma separated thing of values, and a closed square bracket. This is a list literal. It has 5 elements in it, 5 elements. So we know it's finite. It's not infinite. We know the for loop will stop after looping 5 times. This makes it a definite loop because we definitely know it's going to stop. So why do we use the for loop? We have a for loop whenever we have a collection of things we want to do stuff with for each thing inside that collection, or we want to loop over a sequence of numbers. And that sequence of numbers can be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, like we saw with the range. It can be like 1992 all the way up to 2001. We saw that. So this range of numbers, or we can skip numbers. We could be like, we want the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, all the way up to 11, for example. So we can loop over a sequence of numbers. And sometimes that sequence of numbers has a meaning for us, like some number, some year, or some, like all the odd numbers up to 11. So we'll find other things to loop with, but right now we've been introduced to lists. Here's a list that has text inside of it instead of numbers. So this would loop A, B, and C. Let's go see that in our program. I'm going to go ahead and comment this out and comment all this out. And rather than doing 1 through 5, I'm going to do A, B, C. And so now it's not the numbers, it's the letters A, B, and C. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and you'll see it prints out A, B, and C. Whatever is inside this list, the for loop will look at it one at a time. We can do different values, A, 2, and true. That's a string, a number, integer, and a Boolean value. What happens now? Let's go ahead and run that. Boom. It prints out A, 2, and true. Look at that, because each of these values was bound to that variable one at a time. We also saw using ranges, which loops over a sequence of numbers. In this case, it would be 0 through 9. Remember, this last number here, this number, if we give it 1 argument, it's up to but not including that. So it goes up to 9. If we did range 100, that would be the numbers 0 through 99. Quite often we'll find bugs in our programs because instead of 100, we really meant 101 so that we could get the numbers 0 through 100. But instead we typed 100, and that's only going to go this up to 99. So that's something we always have to remember. That number that we put here, it doesn't include it. So sometimes we're going to have loops inside of loops. We'll do this because we have a list of lists. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes we need to build some kind of rectangle, whether or not that's really graphical, like we see it on our screen, or it's conceptual, like in our head. But we'll have to build a rectangle of some kind. And so we'll use a for loop inside of a for loop. You'll see examples of this in the problem walkthroughs. So we use a for loop to loop a specific number of times through a collection. That specific number of times means that we have some sort of list or something like a range, which has a finite number of things in it, a specific number of times. And the for loop gets the values out of that collection one by one and puts it into a variable. And it's known as a definite loop because it will likely stop. We can find places where a for loop won't stop because our list is infinite. But, in most cases, it will likely stop because it's a nice finite list. So I'm going to recommend that you try out the problems in the looping chapter and solve each one with a while loop and a for loop, and then watch the problem walkthroughs. And right now, I'll go ahead and do a problem walkthrough, the first problem, using a for loop. In the last lecture, I used a while loop. This time, I'll use a for loop. So here's that problem again. A bug collector collects bugs every day for 5 days. Write a program that asks for each of the bugs on each of the days, right here, and then display the total. Well, originally with the while loop, I had to have an extra variable for the days. But now I can use the for loop for day number in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just give it a list of all the numbers that I want, and then for each day, it's going to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a prompt, which will be something like, how many bugs did you collect on day plus string day number? This isn't different. That part is the same as with the while loop. And now we'll do the input, num bugs. And that's going to be input our prompt. We're going to print out that prompt, the thing that we just created right here, and we'll show that and get the number of bugs back. And then, of course, we'll have to take that and we'll create an integer out of it so that we can add it to a total. Whoops, I don't want day number. I want num bugs. And then I need a total. So I'm going to go up here and create a total is equal to 0 because we start out with 0 bugs. And then we'll do total plus equal num bugs. Now, in the while version of this, I had to increment day number because I had to make the day number manually go up by 1. But because I'm using a for loop here and I've specified the 5 days that I want, days 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I don't have to increment anything. The for loop is going to go and grab the first one, put it in here for me, grab the second one, grab the third one, grab the fourth one, grab the fifth one, and then when it's done, it will be done and it will go to the next line down here. So that we'll now do something like print, you collected total bugs. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. How many bugs did you collect on day 1? You see, it's taken this 1 here, it's put it in this variable, and now that variable is being used. How many bugs? So I'll collect 12 on this one, 2 on this one, 3 on that, 34 on that. Oh man, I'm collecting a million, a lot of bugs. So I collected 10,072 bugs. I don't like this because there's no space here, so I'm going to put a space because I just like all my programs to be pretty. So now I'm going to Python debugger this so we can see it step by step. I'm going to put a breakpoint here on the first code line. It won't work if I put it here. And I'll go ahead and come up here and run Python debugger. And so right now this is the first line. Nothing is run yet, so we don't have any variables. As soon as I step over this, now I have a total variable equal to 0, and we're on this for loop here. So again, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to take this 1 value. It's going to take the first value in the list and put it inside this variable day number. Boom. And now I have day number equals 1. And so it's going to create that prompt for me. How many bugs did you collect on day 1? And now it's going to print it out and get my input, 10. And now that's been put back here. Numbugs is the string 10. Turn it into an integer right here. Add it to the total. Total equals 0. Total plus equals numbers of bugs will now be 10. Now I'm back at the for loop. It's already used the 1. So now it's going to go to the 2 and put that inside day number. Boom. Now day number is 2. It creates that prompt for me. It prints it out. How many on day 2? 20. I've got the number of bugs, turn it into an integer, add it to the total, set the total. Now the total is 30, and I'm back here to this day number. It's already used the first 2. Now it's on this third one. It's going to take that 3 and put it in day number. Boom. Now day number is 3. It creates the prompt. It prints out day 3. I'll do 30 on day 3. I'll turn it into an integer, add it to the total. Now I have 60. Now we're back here to the for loop, and we're on this part. We're in this element of the list, 4. So it's going to take that and put it inside day number. So boom, now prompt, and it's going to print out my prompt, hopefully. Where's the prompt? Boop, prompt. Oh, I haven't run it yet. Prompt. How many days? 4 right there. So I'll do 40. Get the number of bugs, turn it into an integer, add it. Now it's 100 bugs. Now I'm on the 5th element. So it's going to take this, and the for loop is going to take that element. It's already used all of these. So now it's on this one. It's going to put it inside day number. Now day number is 5. And I'll build a prompt, and I'll print out the prompt. I'll put in the number of bugs. I'll turn it into an integer. The total, I'm going to add that to 100. The number of bugs is 50. So now I have 150, and I'm back here to the for loop. It's used all of these. So now it's at the end of the list. There's no more for it to do. So it's not going to run anymore. It's going to say, I'm done. And it's going to jump to the next line. And so it should jump down here to line 17. Boom. Now I'm down here on line 17 because it went through this entire list one by one, gave me the day number, put each value inside that variable. And then once it was done with the list, it's like, I'm done. And so I'm not going to do that anymore. Python's just going to continue. And it prints that out and my program is done.